Hi guys, welcome back. Today's video is going to be a month in books. This is a series I'm starting and it's kind of like a monthly wrap up, but it will explain why I bought certain books, why I read certain books and why I actually picked them up and what my thought process was during those bookish times. I am someone who doesn't get to read as much as when I was a teenager just because life gets in the way and working, and I'm busy socialising and seeing family and going to events and just sort of living life, especially living life in London. So I have to be a little bit more strategic about when I get to read, what I get to read. So I'm definitely a lot I'm pickier about what I read and why I read it. So a month in books kind of encapsulates the life as a busy millennial woman, and why I'm reading certain books I'm reading, and some weeks I just don't read because mentally I can't find that space to enjoy something. So it's just going to take you guys through my sort of month in books. So yeah, if you've read any of the books I mentioned, then hit me up in the comments and we can have a chat about my discussion and things like that. So without further ado, let's get started. The first book I read was Ponty by Charlene Teo. Now I read this because I went to the Lush Book Club. The Lush Book Club is a book club that takes place in the Lush Studios, for those of you who don't know, in Soho in London, and you get given a sort of a free copy of the book, a Lush product, and you get to sort of sit and listen to a Q&A with the author, and typically Anna James, about the book, about sort of inspiration behind it, about how they write, why they write, just generally author chit chat. You get to go to a signing after in their studio, and there's some cake and you get to meet the author, and it's just a really relaxed environment. It's really great. Ponty is probably my favourite book of September. It definitely stuck with me. It's a book about mother-daughter relationships, and it's written in the viewpoint of three characters. So sort of set in 1960s, 1990s and the noughties, or I think it's 2020, and it kind of is this interweaving storylines that slowly sort of start to interconnect, but it looks at mother-daughter relationships and how these relationships shape us into our adulthood, and I think it's a really interesting concept. It's also the first book I've ever read that takes place in Singapore, and I would definitely read more. So whilst the novel is centred on these relationships, it's also centred on the Pontianak, which are these cult movies. I think that's really, really interesting, and that's something that is so lamented within one person's life becomes a bigger part of other people's, and it's these smaller things you look back on when you're older and that remind you of important points in your life. Ponty was incredible. Charlene Teo was lovely to meet, and I think I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, or even 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I just really liked it. I liked that it was mother-daughter relationships. I like that narrative was being explored, and I think it's something that, as a novel, that definitely could be read by young adults as well as adults. I think it kind of transpires the reading band ages. But yeah, I really recommend this book. The second book I read was And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness. I went to the launch of this on the 6th of September on the HQS Wellington. It was on the boat, and it was Patrick Ness in conversation with Rosanna Holsworth-House. And this book, it's a fantasia, or a hypertext of Moby Dick. I've read quite a few hypertexts. I've read Jack Maggs and Mr. Pip, and they're all hypertexts of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, but this is told through the point of view of the whale, and they're in this whale pod, and it's about them hunting this evil character, Toby Wick. And what is beautiful about this book is that the illustrations are in no way supplementary. They are trying to get it away. They are compulsory. They are, they tell part of the story in themselves, and these illustrations are beautiful and gorgeous, but I think this is a really great way into reading more Melville if you haven't read any Melville at all. I think it's a great way into hypertext as well as a thing, and I had a discussion with my friend about whether hypertext were fanfictions and fanfictions were hypertext. I think it's really interesting because I think certain times books can blur that line, and I think that's brilliant, and I think to be inspired by other people is also amazing. This is a children's book, I think, children's, I use that term loosely, but it definitely is something for adults as well, and I think the illustrations are beautiful, and I think it kind of encapsulates what Patrick Ness is about. He's about experimenting with font and type and form, and yeah, I really love the illustrations. So I would recommend this book as potentially as a Christmas present now. We're coming up to that time of year where beautiful copies of books are or should be gifted. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The next book I read, and I've already passed it on to a friend to read, was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I picked this up in a charity shop and I absolutely adored it. For those of you who don't know, Ready Player One is kind of set in the future, but also I always imagine it to be like, it's set in a fictional world, and it follows the viewpoint of, oh my god, what's his name? It follows a character, and essentially everyone's hooked up to this like simulation archive thing, and they so the maker of this like online world dies, and inside it he has like this prize money, and you get ownership of the web if you find I think it's if you find the key, and you have to follow all these breadcrumbs, all these trails. But essentially Ready Player One is like a homage to all these other different video games, video game culture, literature, music, all these references. There are so many references within Ready Player One that it's just a beautifully built up world. And I think in Alice Clan's dedication or in acknowledgements, he just mentioned that it is like it is an ode to all the things that he's loved in life, and it is like this beautiful I don't know, it's just like you're reading it, you're like, oh my god, yes, I love that one too, and I love this one. And the character development is quite interesting in it, in that, you know, you have these people who are online and they never meet in real life, and they have these avatars and they hide behind that, but yet their relationships grow and develop, and you wouldn't, when the big reveals all sort of happen, you're kind of like, oh, you weren't expecting that, and that's because you really trust the characters that you're following. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend Ready Player One. I haven't watched the Steven Spielberg adaptation of it, but I really did love the novel, and I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone who is interested in world building, and I think just in general, just pop culture references. I think anyone can enjoy it, and video gamers would love it. The fourth book I read this month, and again I don't have a copy of because I lent it out, is Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer. I didn't really like this book, and maybe I need to go and reread it and revisit it, but I just felt like the two narratives were disjointed, and I didn't kind of feel how they interconnected very well, and that's my own personal opinion, but as it is my personal YouTube channel, I can't, you know, endorse things that I don't enjoy or didn't enjoy. And the final book I read this month, or managed to just squeeze into the end of this month, is Little Black Book by Otega Uwagba, and I hope I've said that right because I do listen to her podcast and I think she's incredible. Little Black Book is a toolkit for working women, and it kind of just gives you tips and advice if you're newly working or if you've worked in there a while. It kind of goes through important sections that you might need, so sort of, yeah, overcoming creative blocks, building your brand, public speaking. I used that because I did some public speaking a few days ago, like getting to know your worth and things like that, and I know there's a revised version of this coming out soon. This was £5 from Waterstones, that's where I picked it up from, and I would, if you're a working person, not just a woman, I think it's really important if you're someone who's not confident or should be confident but isn't, things like that. I think it's really important to grab yourself a copy of this and sit down and read it and do what I'm going to do and sticky note it. I mean, I didn't really realise there were so many great services online for free that can help give you refiller courses in Create Cloud software and all those sort of things. So I think you should, if you haven't already, give this like book a little read and a little pick up, or even just check out Women Who online, because they've got some great articles on there, and I think it's a time to be alive. And I think, you know, with the creative industries marching on really bravely into this new world, I think everyone should be reading books like this, and I think definitely going to try and fit in like a career book a month. So those are my 5 books this month, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you read any of these books or have any of these books on your TBR list, then please let me know in the comments, and I will enjoy chatting to you guys. Have a great day. Bye guys. Bye.